Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. We tell interesting and compelling and personal stories each and every week on our Kansas City Profiles, but certainly no more than that of Les Norman. Raised in a troubled home, Les has overcome obstacles his entire life. He has turned into a thoughtful, absorbing, and interesting storyteller in his radio show. He is a coach. He is a personal life coach. He does all kinds of things that have related to his life and his journey, a journey that included two short stints in the major leagues, a time he looks back on fondly, but not as the most important thing in his life's journey. Les has used that life's journey to create a multi-platform business model that really has provided a tremendous amount of help and outreach for thousands and thousands of people. He tells interesting stories of other people. He tells interesting stories of himself. So let's let him do that. I don't need to tell you any more about the story of Les Norman, the former Kansas City Royal. He can tell it himself, and he does so brilliantly. It's a compelling, thoughtful, and honest conversation that comes your way next, right here on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. It's time now to get some great assistance on healthcare with Chad Beisel from no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's becoming a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com and let Chad help you. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson and Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Les, you were born in Warren, Michigan, but much like me, I was born in Brattleboro, Vermont, but since I moved when we were one, I don't have any, and I've never been back, I don't have any memories of Brattleboro, Vermont, and you moved shortly after you were born from Warren, Michigan to Pittsburgh, and then at the age of 7 back to Illinois. But what are your very first memories, childhood memories? Do you remember when you were first coherent of what was going on around you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and one I don't get asked at all. I mean, this is the first time anyone's ever asked me that part of it, but I remember living in an apartment that was right outside of a parking lot, which was the parking lot for the local hospital. And my sister and I and some friends around the area, we would just go climb on buildings, go into old buildings, just have the run of the neighborhood and just do our own thing. So it was a safer time, and it was a fun time, at least as far as going around and doing your own thing. But yeah, every day was play outside.
So you move to Illinois, and while we have done so many profiles where people talk about the joys of childhood and some idyllic times, that was hardly the case for you. Your father was abusive and an alcoholic. And when did it really start to have an impact on your life, or when did you really feel like you were really being affected by it strongly?
I think, Danny, it was actually right before we moved to Illinois. I think it was around 5 or 6, and I remember this specific incident where my dad had my mom was working somewhere, and my dad had a female friend that was a friend of my mom's. It wasn't a romantic liaison kind of thing. It was just a friend of the family, and then a man who was a friend of his. And it was just one of those nights where my dad had been drinking, and they got in a fight. And I vaguely remember the details, except for it was hot but raining, and they were on the floor rolling around. And I remember my dad went outside chasing after this guy who had gotten his car. My dad picked up a brick and actually threw it through the back window of this gentleman's car as he was taking off down the alley. And I think the details of that are so vivid because that was the first time I remember that I was not safe. And knowing my dad screaming, my mom and dad really yelling at each other. I hadn't seen a lot of physical, but it was a lot of alcohol involved. And there was just a lot of yelling. And so shortly after that, when I hit 7, my dad left and flew to where his family was in Illinois. And I remember thinking that, okay, we're going to stay here. Life is safe again. And shortly after that, we got on a plane. And it was, I don't really remember much of the plane flight, but I remember we got on a plane and I wasn't really told what we were doing or where we were going until we almost landed in Chicago. And I remember landing thinking, no, we're following this man. We're chasing after him. And from age 7 until I didn't see him again when I came home and he was gone at age 12. So those 5.5 to 6 years in there, it was brutal. I just remember being a living hell. Every day was something brutal, and every year was something much worse. And so probably from age 5 to 6 when I first caught wind of the violence and feeling unsafe, and that didn't end until I was 12.
Did you ever, a young kid's not really going to probably do something like this, but did you and your sister ever try to get your mom to maybe take off?
Yeah, all the time, actually. And I think that because, and this is what I've learned over the years from professionals in this area, I'm no expert in it, but again, in interviewing other people and talking to other people, when a lot of women that are abused in domestic violence situations, if they don't have any other options, they don't have family, or if money's an issue, or they don't have job skills or whatever, they just feel like maybe they have to stay in it, that it's the better option, that they can take it in order to be able to survive and not be homeless or something like that. And I think that that's what my mom, if I remember correctly, was thinking at the time. I mean, she was working, but she would work like as a clerk at a store or something like that, very low paying jobs, didn't have a college education. She ended up having an abusive mom that drove her out of the house. My dad had an abusive mom who drove him out of the house. And so it was kind of that perfect dysfunctional match between the two of them. So we begged and begged for her to leave and that we could make it on our own. But I just don't think that she thought that she would be able to do that and survive.
Your dad left when you were 12. Do you remember the circumstances of that day, or did he just disappear?
I do. I came home from school one day, and ironically, what I thought this would be at the time, what I thought would be the greatest day of my life. I came home, and they weren't fighting. They weren't yelling and screaming. And the weird thing was, Danny, was that my dad had a really good construction job, supposedly. He worked at a nuclear power plant in Illinois, and they made good money. He was a construction worker, but they were always building at this power plant. And he worked with my uncle, but yet he was always home. There were beer cans everywhere. So I was really confused about how that works. And also I didn't understand, okay, my dad drove this white Cadillac, this two-door brand new Cadillac, but yet we lived in this rundown trailer in a rundown trailer park. The rent was $80 a month, and we could barely even afford that. I mean, I remember surviving on bologna and big bricks of cheese that didn't say Velveeta on them. And so I always wonder, why were we always trying to scrape by? And so every day was yelling, screaming, poverty. And then I came home that one day when I was 12, and I kind of peeked my head in the door and said, "Mom, where's Dad?" And she said, "Well, he's not here. He's gone." And I said, "Well, I can tell that. You guys aren't screaming or fighting. You're not rolling around in a wrestling match in the gravel driveway. When is he going to be home so I know when to prepare?" She said, No. He's not coming back. He left us this time, and he left us for good. Well, in between there were a bunch of times where he'd leave for the night, but
right.
This time she said he wasn't coming back, and that ended up being true. I never saw him again, and I remember thinking, this is going to be the greatest day of my life. And I do also remember that I slept amazing that night. For the first time in my entire life, I felt like I would be safe.
At what point did you use sports, baseball, as a release from this situation?
Well, actually, I was around 8 years old. We weren't in Illinois that long, and it didn't take long for my dad to start from the yelling and screaming into the fist throwing, and if I said something wrong, if I got a B on a test or a C on a math test, it was just a reason to let me have it and smack me and knock me around, and as well as my sister. But I remember coming home one day around 8, and I was maybe still 7 at the time when we had just got there. But I'd had enough. I had a bad day at school. I came home. It was the yelling and screaming. My baseball glove, I'd left it on the patio just below the steps up into the trailer. And I couldn't take it. So I set my books down, grabbed my glove, looped it through my bicycle handlebar like we do when we're kids growing up. And I remember I would always pass the city park, the baseball field, on the way back from walking home or riding home from school. And there were some kids I knew and some kids I didn't, but they would always be like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 playing home run derby or slow pitch or whatever you called it. And so that was the first thing that came to mind. There's kids there. Just go there. And so I rode my bike down there and I asked if I could play, and they said no. And I would just go every day for about 3 to 4 weeks. And eventually they were a man short and they let me play. And so it was an escape just to get away. I was a fan of baseball on TV because whenever I was allowed to, I would watch the Cubs and listen to Harry Carey growing up in, about an hour south of Chicago. And so it was cool to watch it on TV. And I love watching Ryan Sandberg and a lot of those Leon Durham, Gary Matthews, all those old Cubs. But it was once I started doing the slow pitch thing and realized I could run fast and had a really strong arm that I started to get into a passionate sense of love.
You also, like many people do, when you started to hit high school, you had a growth spurt. Is that the time when maybe the aptitude kicked up a little bit?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Danny. For a small town, I grew, when you play it every day and, that passion, I would play, I'd grab one friend and throw a brick against the old AT&T building at Rossi's Field. It was a brick building, and we'd found this old ball, and part of this rubber ball had a little cut in it, so you could throw risers and drop balls. And so I would get this kid out every day, and we would just play, and I'd throw as hard as I could. My arm was hurting, didn't matter. But I was limited on size. I graduated 8th grade at about 5 feet tall, maybe 4'11". I was the shortest kid in my class in 8th grade in the picture. Went out for the team, a small high school of 300 kids. So freshman and sophomore year, I slowly grew, but it probably wasn't until my sophomore year where I hit that huge, awkward growth spurt and went from like 5'1", 5'2", all the way up to 5'10" in a year. And so I started to get a little bit stronger, a little bit more dexterity and coordination, and that's when it really started to kick in around that 16-year-old thing.
But you would face the same demons your dad did a little bit. What do you think? Do you think it was just the whole situation that turned you into quite a partier in high school?
Yeah, and that's a good point, Danny. When I was a kid, I always said that I will never, ever become what my dad did. I'll never abuse women. I'll never be angry. I'll never drink alcohol. I mean, I'd seen enough that I just didn't want anything. But the problem is, what a kid doesn't realize is that, all I ever wanted from my dad was to say he was proud of me. I mean, he never went to a game. I once threw a no-hitter in a Little League game, and one pitch got away, and I didn't throw very hard, so it didn't hurt him, but I doinked one of my best friends on the helmet. And my mom told my dad about it just as a funny thing, but she was ready to tell him, and she was excited. And yet he was drunk, and he smacked me in the face and said, "You could have killed that kid. What's the matter with you? You're horrible." And just told me I was a worthless piece of you know what. And
right.
So, I saw so much in my dad that I didn't want to be, but yet as any young boy, you want that positive influence. You want that encouragement. You want to know that you're a man and that you're going to be okay. And my dad, not 1 second, not ever one time, ever gave me that. And as I go back and look at in my memory banks, the only time I ever remember my dad sober was, I believe, they call it the hair of the dog that bit you. The next day after he's been drinking, he had to have another beer just so he didn't puke his guts out all over the place. But he was in no shape to go outside or to do anything. And so I don't remember him sober and feeling good. So without that influence, I quickly dove into exactly what I had experienced, that the only way, because at 15, 16, you start to get good in sports, but you want to know you're okay. You want to know you're a man. And then I never had any guidance. So I went with what I knew, and that was you drink alcohol with the upperclassmen. You play baseball. You're good in sports. The girls will like you. You blow off school, even if you're smart, because then, people will think you're too much of a nerd back then. And then, you drink alcohol because I wanted to fit in. I hated the taste of it. It made me sick, but I drank it enough of it and eventually got over that. So every single weekend through the majority of high school was a keg party on someone's farm, pasture land, or someone's house out in the country. And you just drank, and that's where you found your acceptance.
But you were thriving as an athlete at this point in time, so it wasn't affecting that aspect of your life. Did you have a sense then that, was this fun for you then? Or looking back, you would say, hey, I did this for this reason or that reason. But at the time, did you think it was fun?
You mean baseball?
No, I mean the whole scene, baseball.
Oh, the party scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that was fun that didn't have something tied to it mentally or emotionally was baseball. I mean, when I was on the baseball field, I felt like nothing could touch me. No one could hurt me. I felt like I didn't have to prove anything to anybody. I mean, I would get mad. I had anger issues, and I'd get mad when I made an out, but I was getting to the point where I was so good, I didn't, and that's not an ego thing. I loved to do it, and I would work hard at it. No one would have to tell me to practice. No one would have to tell me to call someone. I mean, I would use a tennis racket and a wiffle ball and hit the ball as high in the air as I could, spin around 3 times, and then try to catch it because I wanted to be an outfielder. And so the baseball side was always pure and passionate and free. It was freedom, escape, fun, a future for myself. The drinking, you know what? I hated it. It was horrible. I knew it was wrong. I knew I shouldn't have been doing it. I knew I was following the path of my dad. But the thing that always outweighed it was, well, sacrifice that, hurry up and get intoxicated so you didn't have to feel as much. You'd have to feel the pain of your childhood, the pain of the fear of no identity or not being a man. And then eventually people would like you for that. And so, no, I didn't enjoy it. It wasn't fun. I might have lied to myself and thought it was, but every next day I was miserable, and not just because I was sick from the alcohol. I was just sick from trying so hard to prove myself, and it was never returning. I was never fulfilled. And so, but I did it anyway because it all just kind of came together.
When you were getting towards the end of high school, what were the thoughts as far as, which direction you were going to go with your baseball career, professionally, college? You played football too. So where were you at then?
Well, I played football. Our team was good, and we were such a small school, 2A school at the time. I never faced a corner opposite me as a wide receiver that could stick me or have the skills to hit me at the line and take me off my route. I mean, I had free reign. I was faster than everybody. I probably should have been in track because I could really run, but track was the same season as baseball, so obviously I chose baseball. And so I could just run around everybody and catch it. But to be honest with you, I wasn't very big. I wasn't very talented. I could just run fast and tackle people and run fast and catch the ball. So, my aspirations were to go to college. But even before that, my sophomore year, we won state in high school, small class. And we had this pitcher named Brian Dubois, who ended up being the first pick in the 4th round by the Baltimore Orioles that year. And our coach had some hints that, there's a chance that I could get drafted in the late rounds as a high school kid because, you believe it because all the scouts are around seeing Brian Dubois, and he's a stud, and he's a lefty, and he throws 85, 90, and he's got the national pickoff record. And so regardless of whether I got drafted, I had aspirations to play pro ball since I was 8 years old. But I wanted to go on to college, and I really thought that a bunch of offers were going to come in, but and I had a very successful high school career. And even at the end of my senior year, the Junior Olympic Festival people called and said, I filled out this paper and some stats and all that, and I had made the Junior Olympic North team. And so I flew out to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and it was the North, South, East, West teams. And I faced some guys that eventually would go on to the big leagues. My roommate was Dan Wilson, who caught for years as Seattle Mariners from Barrington High School. Remember hitting against Alex Fernandez, and I'd never seen a 94-mile-an-hour fastball by an 18-year-old kid before. And Mike Myers, who was a left-hander from Iowa, was there, and I ended up playing with him in the Arizona Fall League. He pitched for Detroit, the sidearm lefty. So a lot of guys were there, and I thought pro ball was going to be quick, but there was only one college that came calling, and that was the College of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois.
The Red Sox offered you a little bit of money, but you didn't really seem to cotton to the amount. And did you really want to go to college anyway, or did you really kind of laugh it off, as I've read in a couple of accounts?
I did. That was after my junior year of college.
Oh,
I didn't get drafted. Yeah, I didn't get drafted out of high school. So I signed with St. Francis. Interestingly enough, I wasn't going to go to college because St. Francis was going to have me as a PO. They're going to make me be a pitcher only. And I said, I was under the impression that you were going to take me as an outfielder and a pitcher. And so they said, okay, well, if you're not going to come back, if you're going to rescind the verbal offer, then we'll let you play some defense and we'll see if you can prove yourself. And I ended up not pitching a single inning in college, ended up, being a full-year varsity player at St. Francis. After my junior year, that was my big year.
Right.
I had also been invited to try out for not the Junior Olympic team, but the regular U.S. Olympic team, and ended up hurting my back. And so I got cut right away. So you're hurt, you can't try out. And so I came back and, I hit almost 400 and shattered the doubles record at the college, hit, a bunch of home runs, and it was all world. And so I was told by a scout that I would be drafted between the 1st and the 14th rounds. There was a periodical that I don't remember what it was, but supposedly my college coach told me this, that I was voted one of the top 10 college players in the nation, all divisions from D1 all the way down to junior college. And I don't remember ever seeing that, but I was told that. And so I got this idea in my head that, from between the first and the 14th round, I should get at least $50,000. That'll buy me a car, put some money in the bank, and I can drive myself wherever the short season is, and I can get my career started. And so I was drafted by Boston in the 23rd round, and the initial offer was $2,000. And I was offended. I mean, I had nobody telling me, I had an attitude problem is what I did. And my drinking was getting worse in college, but I was still hiding it. I was still able to manage to be an All-American twice at St. Francis, but still unhappy, really depressed behind the scenes, being the life of the party. And so I looked at the scout. His name was Chuck Coney, and he was such a nice man. He walked with a limp because he'd had an accident where a hot water heater had burst and almost literally blew his leg off, and just a sweet old baseball grinder of a scout. And I said, yeah, that's not going to be enough for me. And so I went to play summer ball in Central Illinois Collegiate League and was doing really well. My great junior year had continued on, and I was leading in the Triple Crown in the summer league. And then they came back and said, well, some guys didn't sign. Now we have $10,000 for you. And I said, you're $40,000 short. He said, what? I said, yeah, 50,000 is my marker. I'm not signing. And so he was frustrated, but he said, okay, I'll take that back. And eventually they came back and said, look, Les, you're a 23rd round pick. The Boston Red Sox are willing to offer you $30,000 in the 23rd round to sign. And I said, forget it. You're still $20,000 short. I told you not to even come back if you didn't have that offer. And he looked at me and said, son, I respect you and I understand where you came from. But the Boston Red Sox may not be, you may not be a fit for the Boston Red Sox organization after all. We're going to go ahead and rescind that offer and just wish you the very, very best. So I was crushed. I was heartbroken. And I remember we were going to play against the Decatur Blues. I was sitting on a bus. And Decatur's general manager was another old baseball lifer, and he saw me hanging out the window. And he said, hey, Norman. I said, yes, sir. He said, why in the world did you not sign? I said, because I told them what I wanted, and they never bent on it. He said, do you understand that you might have just passed up an opportunity to play professional baseball, to get paid to play? He said, what if you get hurt? What if next year it doesn't happen? I said, oh, it'll happen. He said, boy, I hope you're right, man. You might have made a big mistake, son. And then he turned around and walked away. I think I got 7 hits in the doubleheader that night because I was so mad what he said, but it was true. And so then to finish up this part of the story, the next year, it was the first time I had played fall baseball. I never played in the fall, even though I was a captain and an All-American. I'd only played football my freshman year of college because I was getting pounded and I was afraid I was going to get hurt. So my sophomore and junior year in the fall, I just took off. I needed a break. I didn't want to play baseball at that time. And I was so angry. I had thrown a bat after popping up in an inter squad that I hit our catcher with the bat accidentally, who happened to be my roommate. And then the next at bat, I threw it against the fence. And there was a freshman playing first base, a freshman, and I'm a senior, All-American. And he said, man, I know I'm just a freshman, but you got a bad attitude, man. You have a horrible attitude. You need to just quit. And so I wanted to fight him, and I turned to fight him. And then right at that moment, our coach came over and said, Norman, you're done. I don't want to see you until the spring. And he shamed me in front of everybody. It's exactly what I needed. That spring, I had a horrible season, was one of the worst players on the team, and somehow got orchestrated that the Kansas City Royals had a charity case, and Tony Lovato was the scout that came to our home and said, hey, the Royals want to draft you. Offered $2,000, which is the Red Sox first offer. And I said, is there any way that you can up that offer? And he said, son, you're a senior. You have no eligibility left. If you don't sign this contract for $2,000, you're not going to sign any contract. So, and before he was even done with the sentence, I grabbed the pen and signed the contract.
Now, was there a point in time where you turned the corner away from, was this the point in time where you turned away? I know it wasn't a straight line route away from your partying days, but what was the trigger for that?
Well, interestingly enough, when I signed, I felt that humility all year as a senior in college, I felt the humility. I was still hiding, but my depression was raging by then. I mean, I was an actual mess behind the scenes. I was getting in fights. I don't even know how I stayed eligible. It was just a train wreck of a year. But then once I signed that contract, it was almost like, okay, I survived. I got away with it. Now I'm a professional, and now, I'm the best player in the world again. And I thought, when I went out there, I'm going to show those guys the kind of player that I am. And so I got out there, and just even the first day of batting practice, I'd never hit with a wood bat before. And I remember this kid, about 5'6", 5'7", second baseman named Dave Haber, and he was taking BP and hitting bombs with a wood bat in batting practice, and I could barely even get the ball to the outfield. And I was embarrassed with how I could hit and all that. And luckily, we had a manager named Tom Poquette, who was an outfielder with the Red Sox, and we had a similar style of play. You run into walls and do whatever you can.
Did that in Kansas City here, as a matter of fact.
That's right. He did. He managed in our minor leagues for a while. And he liked me as an outfielder because I had a strong arm. I could run fast. He said, if you're willing to work, I'll teach you how to hit with a wood bat. And I kind of just, okay, whatever. So I'd separated my shoulder. We were playing against, we were in Bend, Oregon, and we were playing against the A's. Slid into home to avoid a tag and separated my shoulder. And so they put it back in place. They gave me about a week off. And I convinced them that I was okay, but I was not okay. I was still drinking behind the scenes to numb the pain. I was taking about 16 Advil a day, and just to try to function, and ended up going to Tom Poquette, Pokey, we called him. I said, Pokey, listen, I'll do whatever it takes, man. I will humble myself and do whatever it takes. You show me how to hit. I did every drill, everything he told me, whether I thought it was crazy or not. And I ended up getting my average up from probably about 160 up to about 245, 250, right around there.
245, good guess.
There you go. And so, my first two at-bats after our final private session together, I ended up hitting two opposite field home runs about 420 feet over the scoreboard in right center, and I couldn't believe it because it didn't swing hard. But the work paid off, and it wasn't but maybe a few days after that I dove for a ball in the outfield and separated my shoulder again, and this time I knew I'd torn it because it felt different, and I knew my season was over. So we got back to Eugene, Oregon, and I knew that the writing was on the wall. They should have sent me home, but they kept me there another week. And we had a first base coach named Bobby Meacham. And every Sunday we had a chapel service. He played on Sunday, and so a chaplain would come or speaker would come, and you'd have 15 to 20 minutes, and someone would share the gospel with you and read out of the Bible. And I would listen to Bobby Meacham talk, and I would listen to some of these other guys talk. But for me, I would go to chapel because I had raised hell for 6 days. And so I figured I'll take that seventh day to clean the hell off me and then get back at it on Monday. That was my thinking. But what I do remember seeing was that Bobby Meacham, as a coach, the way he treated his wife, the way he treated his 3 kids, the way he treated us, there was always a piece about him that I always wondered, don't you ever get flustered? Don't you ever, I mean, he would get frustrated, yes, or mad or whatever, but when he would discipline or talk to us, it wasn't like he would berate you like my college football coach did, or a high school or summer league coach did sometimes, depending on who you had. There was always a peace, and there was a joy about him that no matter what happened, he just always seemed like he was at peace. And so I remember I was 22. I was sitting in the clubhouse. My left arm was in a sling, and the game went on without me. I remember thinking, okay, my parents don't call me. My sister doesn't call me. The newspapers, the radio, and this is before really, legitimate internet stuff. And I remember thinking, I can't believe they don't want to call me. I've worshipped myself and women and alcohol and all these things, and nothing has ever paid me back. And so I thought, I can't believe this game's going on without me. And if I'm no use to this game, which is the only thing I love, then before this night's over, I'm going to take my own life. And I made a decision right there, sitting at my locker, that I was going to commit suicide that night. I didn't know how, but I was firm in that decision. And shortly after that, Bobby Meacham had forgotten something. I don't know if it was a scorecard or whatever, but he was going back into his office. He walked in. It was just me sitting there crying, like heaving, sobbing, crying. And he stopped and he said, "Dude, what's wrong?" And I just blurted out, "Meech, there's something different about you. I got to know what it is, because I'm lost, man. I am absolutely lost, and I'm at the end of my rope." So he sat down and shared his faith with me, and about having a personal relationship with Jesus, and just shared the gospel with me. And that saved my life.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from wreckexpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident. From David Cowan, visit wreckexpert.com and learn more.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I just want to thank everybody for supporting local restaurants during this time of uncertainty. 23rd Street Brewery is now open until this pandemic is over. And right now, more than anything, local restaurants need your help and support. Come on out and see us. 23rd Street Brewery is open now from 11:30 till 9 o'clock for dine-in and carry-out. Whatever we can do to help you out, maybe with your catering needs, too. I appreciate all the support, and thank you for continuing to shop local.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner, and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that, and moving on in age as we all are. What do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. If they just contact me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. Let's spend a minute with Dr. Brad Woodle, who, along with his wife, Dr. Christina Woodle, the owners of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture, my home for chiropractic care. And first of all, just tell us about the wide range of services you offer.
Danny, we offer comprehensive chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapy, and rehab. We do a very thorough examination, x-rays on site as necessary, and we have a full rehabilitation department, so we can help out with exercises, stretches, different therapies for the complex, but also the very simple conditions we treat.
You have been deemed essential and have remained open all through this COVID-19 process. What are some of the things you've done to make sure that was the case?
From the very beginning, in March, we started to make sure that we were cleaning and sanitizing with EPA-registered sanitizing products. We also implemented masks way before the state required them. We implemented a parking lot waiting room, took out half of the chairs in our waiting room, and made sure to space out visits so we could appropriately meet, discuss, and also screen patients to make sure we were taking care of healthy people.
Find out more about Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture and how they can help you at asfca.com. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Our guest is Les Norman. Of course, you know him from a variety of things in this area. He does so many things. He's on the radio. He's a public speaker of great note, coach, and just a general all-around great guy. There, how you go? There you go, Les.
Well, thank you, brother.
Well, that story is also a fantastic way to end the first part of our particular story. So, obviously, whether it was that or not, you thrived in the minor leagues after that. You had several good seasons in a row and turned yourself into a real prospect. How did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it made me feel good to have success in baseball, but it made me feel good to have it the right way because after that time, when I gave my life over to the Lord, I wanted to live for God instead of myself. I thought I was still going to get released, but they sent me home. I had the reconstructive surgery. The next spring training, they have to make sure you're okay, so they couldn't release me yet. And Tom Poquette in spring training just stuck up for me. I proved that I was healthy enough to play again. They wanted to release me, but Pokey said, just let me take him to A-ball with me. You know, he'll be a backup outfielder. Just let me see what I can get out of him. And he stuck up for me. He put his job on the line for me because I didn't deserve that at all. And I think maybe we were similar outfielders. We were from a similar mold, and we kind of meshed. But I think because I was humble in the sense, I'll do anything you tell me, Pokey, just teach me. And so I became coachable and learned how to hit. And so he saw that in me. And I decided that, when I go to Appleton, Wisconsin, which was low A at the time, if I have to sell hot dogs to keep this uniform, chase foul balls, I'll do it. I'll do anything. Well, a couple guys got hurt. And so I was forced into the lineup right away. And by the All-Star break, I was hitting close to 400. Instead of getting released, I ended up getting promoted and skipping high A, going straight to double A. And I always kept that work ethic. I became a student of the game. I watched other hitters. I paid attention. I talked to pitchers instead of just watching them. How would you pitch this guy? And I just became a student, and every single bit of wisdom, along with hard work and swing after swing that I could do, get, and take, I would do. And it ended up to being a pretty successful minor league career, and it got me to the big leagues pretty quickly.
So tell the story of when you did get to the major leagues. You're 25 years old. It's about the time you sort of got a fish or cut bait at this point in time.
Right.
But you'd had 4 good seasons in a row, so you certainly earned the right to have the attention. What ended up in 1995 getting you the call?
Oh, man. Well, to start, I was in AAA, and we were beating a team. I can't remember who it was. We were beating a team pretty badly, and I was hitting in the order in front of outfielder Keith Hughes. So Keith was I think a career minor leaguer at the time, and it was about the 7th inning, and Joe Jones was in town, who was our roving minor league coordinator guy, or whatever you want to call him. Bob Hegman, who was our minor league coordinator. John Wathan, Duke, was in town. He was our big catching guy at the time. We had all this minor league brass in town all at once, and I was, why is everybody coming here at once? You just don't normally see this in the minor leagues. And so Keith Hughes flew out for the 3rd out, and I was rounding second, going hard. He caught the ball, so I handed my helmet to Jersh. And Jersh looks like he's ticked off at me. And I said, what's the matter with you? He's like, did you see the hit and run sign? I said, Jersh, it's the 7th inning, and we're up like 10 runs. There is no way you gave the hit and run sign, especially with 2 outs. Come on. He's like, I blankety blank blank did. Don't you tell me what I did. And he walked off mad and just dropped the helmet. I'm like, wow. So I went out. I was playing center, and Keith Hughes was playing right. We were warming up. I said, Keith, did you see a hit and run sign? And he said, there's no way to give a hit and run sign. We're up 10. It's the 7th inning, and there was 2 outs. I said, that's what I thought. And Jersh said that. So instead of me biting my tongue, I went into the dugout after the innings, and I said, Jersh, I told you, ask Hughesy. And he said, Hughesy couldn't find his you-know-what in a paper bag, so don't you tell me that. And he just started screaming at me in front of the dugout. And I said, okay, man, got it. So I sat down, game's over, go in the clubhouse, we're celebrating. I literally take my pants down. I got my sliding shorts on, but I pull my pants off to get undressed. My pants are around my ankles, and Jersh comes out and slams the door. Open. He says, you get your blankety blank, you know what, in my clubhouse, or in my office. I said, can I take my pants off first? He's like, see, that smart mouth ought to release you right now. I'm like, okay, give me a second. I'll be right there. So I walk in the office. There's a chair in the middle of the floor. And around the chair is Joe Jones, Duke Wathan, Bob Hegman, pitching coach Mike Alvarez, and one of our other coaches. And I sit in the chair, and I said, Jersh, before you speak, I just want you to know I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll never talk back to you again, no matter what. And because I thought I was getting released. He looked at me and said, well, that's a good thing you said that, because tomorrow, if you do that in Kansas City, Bob Boone will send you right back here. I said, yeah, wait a minute, what? And then the whole room busted out laughing. They knew they were calling me up before that day,
right,
but they didn't pull me out. They just wanted to jack with me and mess with me the whole time. and it worked because I was freaked out. But then, they told me they were just messing around, that I was a good sport, and welcome to the major leagues.
You got a little bit of action in 95, but you probably, I know from talking to you many times, that you felt that 1996 was going to be the year where you'd actually really get a chance and maybe break camp, and that story isn't a fun one.
No, it's not, and it is now, but it wasn't then. In 95, I got called up on May 31st, spent the month of June up, and did okay. Just in a part-time role, went back down, and the September call-up came, and got to spend September there. And that's actually when I ended up meeting my wife, so that was worth it. And then, obviously, on the Major League roster, go to spring training, Patrick Lennon, Brent Cookson, Tom Goodwin, Michael Tucker. I mean, we're loaded with outfielders and good hitting outfielders. But I ended up tearing it up. I mean, I had the spring of my life. I couldn't have had a wiffle ball video game spring training like that spring training I had. Hitting home runs and high average and playing great defense. I had been used to always going in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, filling in for everybody else so they could go hit the golf course. And now it was me. 5th inning, I got to leave. People were replacing me. And I thought, this is going to be great. And I made the team in 96. And then I remember getting a pinch hit appearance on opening day in Baltimore. Randy Myers struck me out on 3 pitches. And after that, man, I think that season I ended up in 54 games played, but only had 49 at-bats, where I should have had at least 100 in a severely limited role. But I was relegated to pinch hitting or defensive replacement, an occasional pinch hit. And, there was a time, too, where I even got sent down. I wasn't a catcher, but in Toronto, I got sent to the bullpen because Bob Boone didn't want to see me for some reason. So I ended up just catching bullpens on a road trip between Detroit and Toronto.
And that season didn't go well, but subsequently you would have some good years still in the minors. But I guess when you're in your late 20s, you probably have to get to a point where you realize that first of all, I want to backtrack. I want to know the story of you meeting your wife. You said you met your wife right around the time that you got your major league chance. How did you meet your wife?
Yeah, this was the number one reason why. It was 95 and 96 were worth it, even though a year and 62 days in the big leagues doesn't seem like a big career. But to meet this amazing woman who's now my wife of almost 24 years is worth every ounce of pain that I went through. I was living in the Adams Mark across the street, and I said, hey, I will, again, this is September. I'm sitting in my hotel room. McFarland and Maine were the catchers, and Bruce Keeson said, we're going to start catching bullpens before BP because all the pitchers were going to the bullpen and we didn't have enough guys to shag. So Tim Belcher was the first one, and we know Tim Belcher was a little bit of a feisty character.
Yeah.
And so, I geared up, and they said, okay, that's great. Thank you. And so I walked out that first day, and that, the bullpen at the time was where it is now behind right field. And so I was walking out, and these two ushers, 15, 16-year-old kids, said, hey, Norman, and I didn't have my jersey on. I just got called up. I said, yeah, guys, what's up? And he said, hey, come here real quick. So I just took 2 steps toward him, leaned in, said, what's up? And they said, hey, this girl wants to meet you. And my first response was, nope, not going to do it. Because about a week before that, I was sitting in my locker, and I had kind of a history of introspection, which you can probably tell. But I remember just thinking, every relationship that I've ever had, I've either hurt the girl or she's hurt me. And they all end badly, which if any of them end, they usually end badly because they end. And so I just thought, I was just praying at my locker, God, I'm just going to trust you. I'm going to do my best here. And I'm going to put the relationship thing on the hold. So a week later, these 2 kids say, hey, this girl wants to meet you. I said, no, guys, I'm not interested. And they just kept talking. What I didn't realize was now Belcher was in the bullpen. And he's yelling, get that blankety blank yourself out here, and let's get this blankety blank thing done. I don't even want to be here. And so to get rid of them, I just said, tell her I'll meet her after the game. I got to go. So I went to the bullpen, and then they went to this young girl who was cleaning seats this is before the renovation. So it was, I think, club level or view, whichever, the middle section. And they went up to her and said, hey, you see that guy down there, that rookie in the bullpen, he's catching? She said, yes. And they said, hey, he was asking about you. He wants to meet you. She said, nope, Absolutely not. I want nothing to do with baseball players. I'm here to work. I've got 3 jobs. I'm putting myself through college. I'm a freshman in college. Don't even think about it. But they kept pestering her, and finally she said, you know what, just tell them I'll meet them after the game and leave me alone. So after the game, it was this awkward, like, hey, I thought you wanted to meet. And so to break the ice, I said, how about this? Just let me have your number. And how about I'll meet you tomorrow night? Maybe we'll go out to eat or something. She said, okay. Now, secretly, what I was thinking was, that might be the most beautiful young woman I have ever seen in my life. And what the heck is she thinking she's seeing in me? But we became friends. And so that was September 95. We were engaged July of 96 and married in February of 97.
That's another fantastic story. As the next 4 years are playing out, what's your mindset? You're playing well in the minors, but late 20s towards the age of 30, the opportunity probably feels like it's slipping away. How often did you feel like, hey, it's time to, give it up, or how determined were you to make it work one more time?
Well, I was determined, and the reason why I was determined was because of how I went out in 96, because I told you I had that great spring in 96, and I fully expected to make the team. And so Tony Muser called me into his office and sat down in front of me. And now he will have the opposite opinion if you ask him. He says that this never happened, but I know it happened because this isn't something that I would lie about. I sat down and he said, son, you had an incredible spring, and I want you to know you made this team. But we've got someone we want to trade, who was Jeff Conine, and as soon as we trade him, you're going to be on this team. That's your spot. We just got to trade him. So go to minor league camp for a day or two or whenever it happens, and you go ahead and, we'll come get you. I said, great. Thank you for being honest with me. I have no problem. That night, my wife and I were watching SportsCenter from the Holiday Inn across the street from Baseball City, and they traded Jeff Conine that night. So we were excited and hugging and high-fiving. I was in tears. Actually, I'm sorry. That wasn't 96. This is 99. Okay. So I hung on. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So I had hung on those years because I know I was good enough to still play. I went with Buffalo in 97, had a good year in AAA, hit 18 home runs from the leadoff and 2-hole, 98 with Oklahoma City, hit 300 with Texas. In both of those, 97, I was one of the last guys cut in camp. Hargrove cut me, but I'm not going to crack a Manny Ramirez, Kenny Lofton, Juan Gonzalez lineup.
Right.
And Chad Curtis is a backup, and Roberto Kelly is a backup. I'm not breaking that outfield. So then with Texas, Rusty Greer, Juan Gonzalez ends up signing with Texas, and you've got those. So I was the last one cut. Johnny Oates, I was number 26. Ended up hitting 302, still not called up, because back then, like anything, it's a business, and people don't want to make paper moves. So I signed back with the Royals, and it was the only team that wanted me. And so I said, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And, but it was a minor league contract. And so the minor league contract, I was going to the minor league side, but Allard Baird was the GM, and him and Muser got together and said, hey, this guy's been a solid young man of character in our organization. Let's just bring him to big league camp for spring training just to show that we would honor him and that we appreciate his efforts. And I was thankful for that, except for the fact that I also hit even better, I think, than I did in 96. And I tore it up. And so in 99, I was called into his office, and he said, you made the team. That night they traded Conine. The next day, I'm standing in minor league camp. Ron Johnson's our manager. And I saw the cart coming over in the morning. And I was excited, but I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to blow it, didn't want to brag, didn't want to say anything, because these guys are in minor league camp too, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. So he calls RJ over. They're talking. He goes in to get the equipment. Ron Johnson comes back and says, Scott Pose, you made the team. Go get your stuff and go over to the big leagues. And I never saw a day.
Wow. Yeah.
And at the end of the season, I called Herc Robinson and said, I want you to know I earned that spot, and this is what was said. And Herc just said, I didn't know that. I'm going to go find out right now, because I remember the Royals were playing a day game while I was driving through Kansas City coming back home. And he took the call. And 2 days later, Herc called me back and said, Tony said he never said that, Les. That never happened. He said it never happened. And so 2000, I signed back with the Royals again because it was the only team that wanted me. And it was, I was offered big league camp again, and you could have cut the air with a knife there, and I just stayed away. They broke camp, and then at the end of that season, my wife and I said, it's time to start a family. I'm not doing it from the road. It's obvious what they think of me, and so I retired.
How tough was that?
It wasn't tough.
Okay.
It was tough thinking about 99. It was tough thinking about them taking me off the roster after the 96 season because I didn't know what I could do because Bob Boone, hid me on the bench. I mean, you don't play 54 games and get only 49 at bats and play a full major league season. That just doesn't happen. So my perspective in 2000 wasn't about the rejection of that. I got to do something. And again, I equate this, the only reason I was able to think this way is because of giving my life over to God instead of giving my life over to me. And I feel like God really showed me over the years that, your life is for me to glorify my son's name, not you. I've got bigger plans for you, and I know this is painful, but I want you to trust me in this. When I got cut in 99, I called Kevin Seitzer, who is to this day a dear friend and a strong man of faith. I said, dude, this is what happened. I told him the story. And Kevin says, praise God. I'm like, dude, I just told you I got cut and I didn't deserve it. And you're telling me, praise God. What the heck? I thought we were friends. He said, no, man, maybe that's God telling you I've got bigger things for you. And although I know you want this now, there are different things that I have for you in your life. And it took me a long time to get a hold of that. But my wife and I had shared a room with a guy that season in AAA that every night he'd be on the phone crying. He'd been in the minor leagues for 20 years. And he would cry on the phone. I've missed basketball. I've missed Girl Scouts. He ended up losing his family over the whole thing. And it just wasn't going to be me. And my dad left. I never grew up without a dad. I grew up without a father. And so my wife and I decided, look, when we want to start a family, it's time to retire. And at the end of that season, we've been praying about it. We've been talking about it. And we decided, yep, we feel led that this is the last day of professional baseball I'll ever play. So I walked in the clubhouse and told the manager, this is it. And they put me in the lineup and, walked away and never looked back. And I have no regrets.
In the 20 years since then, you've really built something pretty remarkable on a variety of platforms. But when you're first starting out in that journey, what is it like?
Oh, it was horrible, Dave. It was brutal. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Do I coach kids? I mean, I know I'm going to start a family, but I didn't end up finishing my degree in marketing. I mean, I could be a coach. Mark Shapiro at the time was the GM for the Indians. And I remember him telling me in 97, we're not calling you up, but here's what we will do. When you decide to retire, you call me and I will put you as a manager in our minor league system to groom you to be a major league coach because I think that you have what it takes to run a major league team. That's an honor that most people will not ever hear, let alone have that faith and let you play a few more years and come back. But again, in conversations with my wife, it would just be like I'd be playing all over again, and my family and my faith was worth a lot more than being away. I can't raise a family. I can't be the husband I'm called to be. And if I'm going to have kids, I'm never going to be the father that I need to be and that my dad wasn't if I'm not home. So that was never an option. So I spent 2 years trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and it was a scary time. I mean, I built a house, had a baby, and had no job, all at the exact same time. So it was a nervous time, but again, through prayer and deciding, okay, I'm going to use this platform to build into the lives of kids and build into the lives of other people. And so I ended up starting an academy, and over the years ended up, public speaking and starting the radio show. I work part-time at our church now, working with our youth. I'm a life coach. So I've got plenty of things to keep me busy.
At what point along the way did you kind of feel like, okay, this is working? I know there were probably a lot of prayers and a lot of conversations with your wife, but you've developed such a multi-platform type of world with, the radio show and the speaking and the coaching and everything else. So when did that sort of feel comfortable that this is going to work?
Danny, I love the fact that you've been doing this for so long. You always know the exact questions to ask, and I so appreciate your talent over the years. It's amazing. it probably wasn't until about 7 or 8 years ago, and I'm 51 now, so it was probably 43, 44 years old, that all the hard work and all the faith and all those years in between, from like age 31 to 44, so for about 13 years, developing my own brand, starting an academy, getting rid of it because it just wasn't fulfilling, and I was starting to not see my oldest son, who was a baby at the time. Just so many nights of, am I doing the right thing? It just, monetarily, this is always a struggle. It's always a grind. Why does life have to be this hard? But I always felt like God was leading us down this road. And so about 7 years ago, we found our niche. I had been doing my own radio show for 3 years, was not great at it, but the stories and the content was there. And so, I got to work with great people like you and studying people across the country and how they did it to develop my own voice, my own style, and to make it into a radio show that at least maybe somebody wants to listen to. And if not me, at least the positive stories of people. I realized I was a people person. I realized I could use my story of tragedy as a kid and, being lied to and earning everything and then getting nothing as far as the baseball thing goes, or what I used to believe. It took me all those years to learn that until I'm at a point of complete humility, that I will not be the influence in other people's lives that I was created and called to be. And so about age 44, I realized I'm good at the speaking thing. I'm good at this radio thing. My wife is really good at managing money and working behind the scenes in the business side and organization and websiting. I studied branding. I became a certified advanced life coach in 4 different areas. And then I had worked as a volunteer in our church for so long, but I got to, again, build into the lives of youth. And so my one business has all these arms, and we finally found, like, on Mondays, I'm focusing on my radio research and my life coaching. On Tuesdays, I'm doing radio. On Wednesdays throughout the day, I'm working on my speaking and my coaching, and then at night do our youth group. On Thursdays, it's strictly a day that I do my part-time work for my church. And then on Fridays, I'm wrapping everything up and tying up all the loose ends and then getting ready to go coach a baseball game, which used to be both boys. Now that my oldest is in college, he doesn't play anymore. And so now in the spring, summer, and fall, my Fridays are, okay, let me go coach you, son, and get my 15-year-old ready and just spend time with him and watch him play baseball and coach him. So it was a long road, but for 7 years, we've got this thing figured out where we don't need a single thing. We're able to bless other people. I work with my wife, which most people can't do, and for a lot of years I thought I couldn't do because she was smart and I was bullheaded and I didn't want to listen. But I think just now, at 51, I'm becoming the husband that my wife deserves, the father my kids deserve, and finally using this platform. I don't believe I was created to be a successful, long-term Major League Baseball player. I believe that God gave me that taste and passion to get me away from abuse, to build up all the things He's created in me, the abilities He's created in me, but yet that Major League 170 batting average in 1 year and 62 days has given me a platform that people will listen to so I can share my faith, encourage people, build into the lives of parents, adults, athletes, and students and kids alike in order to give back everything that God has given me. And I get emotional about that because, I deserve nothing in this life. Just to be alive and to have the family I have and the career that I have. I don't deserve any of it. I've worked hard and had to learn how to earn it. But I'm just truly humbled that God has blessed me the way He has, and I owe Him everything.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like Easton Roofing, the presenting sponsor of Kansas City Profiles at the Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Kling Scale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.